Bigfoot Society would like to thank the following sponsors for helping make the podcast possible. The Singular Fortean Society has combined open and honest paranormal investigation and journalism since 2016. Visit the Society at Singular Fortean for all the latest weird news and more. Come with us and investigate the impossible. Lauren Smith is the hostess for Nightcaller's Bigfoot Radio, which has been on air for over a decade and has completed over 300 shows. Lauren brings with her a unique viewpoint given that she is not only the daughter of one of the veteran female Bigfoot researchers in the South, but she has been conducting field research since she was a preteen some 20 years ago. Nightcallers is a Bigfoot world favorite and, along with interviewing researchers and witnesses, often features interviews with guests from the documentary, film, and entertainment industry. Lauren also does a vidcast segment called Nightcallers, which features real encounters sent in by viewers. You can find all of this and more at nightcallersproductions.com. Welcome to the Bigfoot Society Clubhouse, where we discuss a new or old topic in cryptozoology every week. Just hang out and have a good time. I do need to let you know that by hanging out with us on stage and talking in the discussion, you are giving consent to being recorded, which will be used in a future Bigfoot Society podcast, YouTube video, could be anything that you could imagine coming down the pipeline. If you're not comfortable with that, please go ahead and move on down to the audience. Sit back, relax, have a good time. Again, thanks to all for hanging out, and let's just have a good time. Awesome. Well, again, thanks all for hanging out with us tonight. So my name's Jeremiah. I'm the host of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Please feel free to introduce who you are if you're involved with a podcast or anything or website before you share your cryptids. Feel free to share that as well. But I'm going to share tonight for a few minutes about, so I'm from the state of Iowa, right? And the topic tonight actually allowed me to figure out a new cryptid for Iowa, which is pretty cool, one I didn't know. This is called the Okoboji Lake Monster, it's pretty awesome. So it's from the town of Esterville, Iowa, which is about 3 hours north of Des Moines, just south of the Minnesota state border. There's a huge lake up there, area, Okoboji Lake. It's a big tourist area during the summer. But supposedly there's a big lake monster in there, and there are a few times it was seen. And I'll get to when it was seen in a few minutes. But the first time was there was a Mr. and Mrs. Bartlett were out on a fishing excursion on the lake. They noticed a terrible commotion in the water. Whatever it was moving quite rapidly through the water and quite close to the top. Had the appearance of being as large as an overturned skiff. The other interesting time it was seen, the witnesses said it had a tail like a fish, but a hard-shelled body like a turtle that used large flippers to propel its 8-foot-long body. And it said at first it looked like an alligator. As the beast made another splash, the two campers noticed the beast had a ripped shell body and long tail, complete with long neck and teeth. It's kind of weird to see something like that in Iowa, but the really crazy thing is when this took place. So it took place in July of 1903, which, if we know our Iowa cryptid history, is 2 months before what happened in the town of Van Meter, Iowa, the Van Meter Visitor. So I'm using my resource tonight is the Van Meter Visitor by Chad Lewis and Kevin Lee Nelson. But it's very cool to know that there is another big cryptid sighting just before my favorite in the year of 1903, which would be, the Van Meter Visitor. But that is the cryptid that I am going to share tonight. Carter, do you mind, unless anyone had any thoughts about that, feel free to share, of course. If not, I will pass the mic to Carter next.
Okay, wait, sorry, real quick. I had a thought. You said that this was 2 months before the Van Meter Visitor.
Totally.
Do you have any thoughts on that being part of like a cryptid flap type of situation?
So I would love to think that maybe there was some weird stuff going down in 1903 in Iowa, and the thing I haven't really looked into is that if there's even more stuff that happened in 1903 in Iowa. Maybe there was. I have some more research to do, and once things open up and it gets nicer to go out and stuff, I've even got plans to kind of get involved with the historical society in Des Moines and start doing some digging, Mark Marcel style. Um, that's something I've kind of kept to myself, but I think it would be fun to start looking through old newspapers. So we'll see. Stay tuned, Sarah, on
Do you need a satchel?
that. Yeah, I think any good researcher needs a satchel. Definitely, Greg.
Oh, of course.
All right, go ahead, Carter.
All right. So for anybody who doesn't know me, who's new to the whole clubhouse, I'm Carter Reeves. I'm from Mysteries Obscure. I'm going to be talking about the Lake Michigan sea serpent of Illinois, and well, I guess Lake Michigan is all the states around it. But basically, the whole story is the first sighting was on a clear day in March of 1893. There was a policeman named H.R. Brinkerhoff, and while he was working one day in his office, he looked out the window and found this black speck just like on the surface of the water. And of course, like any other guy would do, he called in one of his friends who was working with him. And he came in and they were just baffled at the sight. And later heard, they went around and they found out that over 200 people saw the same thing that day at like different points in the day. So a lot of like eyewitness sightings. So the newspapers reported it. And what's crazy is the whole thing, like the monster is very similar to depictions of the Loch Ness Monster of Scottish lore. And nobody really talks about the story or like what happened. And it's kind of very much suppressed in like Chicago. Like not many people know about it because it doesn't have like a catchy name or anything like that. But no, there has been several sightings, like other ones I remember in 1952 and I think 1934. There's been several other sightings throughout the years that went by. But no, it's crazy. The first one was 1893. But that's just my small cryptid. Just have a little small thing on that. If anybody else has any comments, feel free to share.
All right, awesome, Carter. Go ahead and let's keep it rolling. Who are you gonna pick next here?
Oh, Greg, let's hear yours.
Hi, I'm Greg Morrill. I run All the Weird on Instagram, and I host a Star Wars podcast with Matt Shang from the Moth Boys and Yami Gonzalez from Cryptid Chat with Yami. It's called Order 66. I'm going to talk about Canadian lake monster because I'm Canadian and I've actually been to this lake. So I'm going to talk about Ogopogo. He's found in British Columbia in a city called Kelowna, and the lake is Lake Okanagan. So Ogopogo is said to be found in the waters of Lake Okanagan, Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. The Salish First Nations people who have resided in the area for over 20,000 years told legends of the spirit of the lake, who would take the form of a great serpent. The city of Kelowna benefits from the tourist draw of Ogopogo. They have a really nice downtown lakefront area. There's restaurants and touristy things to do. It's a really really a beautiful part of Canada, and if you ever get the opportunity to go check it out, I highly recommend it. So there's been several, like many, and some pretty interesting photographs taken. One of the leading Ogopogo researchers is Bill Stasiuk, who started the ogopogoquest.com website. He compiles sightings, and he's actually had a couple sightings of his own. One of his more notable ones was in 1978 when he was crossing the floating bridge from West Kelowna to Kelowna downtown. And him and several other motorists saw the creature crest and dive back under the water. I guess there isn't much to say as in like as far as evidence go. There's been a lot of investigation and resources put into locating. At one point, the city of Kelowna had a capture Ogopogo for a bounty until I think it was Greenpeace stepped in and said, "You can't do that. Like it'll be nuts. Like people just be out there trying to kill whatever moves in the water." So they changed it to capture a photograph of Ogopogo for a prize. Other than that, I guess the area is also known for Sasquatch sightings. It's a rich indigenous culture out there, and just like the scenery, the mountains, the lake itself it's just gorgeous. There's just a feeling of very powerful ancient energy when you go out to this area. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that when they visited a place, but it's something that I definitely felt. I guess that's pretty much what I wanted to share on Ogopogo today. And how about I ask my friend Lisa to step up with her water cryptid?
Wait, really quick before Lisa, because this is now going to be stuck in my head. Did you listen to the Ogopogo song by Paul Whiteman Orchestra as part of your research?
No, I read about it though.
Oh, it's awesome. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, oh, another fun fact is that Ogopogo is a palindrome, so it's spelt the same way forward as it is backwards.
That is amazing. I love that.
Hey, Sarah, if you want to go before me, you could go ahead and go. I know you're tired.
Oh no, I'm totally awake now. I took a shower
okay.
and like popped up. I'm fine. Thank you.
All right, cool. Well, then I will jump on in. I'm Lisa with Cryptid Comforts, and I make handcrafted cryptid themed stuffies and other fun nonsense. You can find me on Instagram. My pick is, so I'm from the Pacific Northwest. We have a few cool water cryptids out this way. The one I chose because I spend so much time sitting out looking at the Columbia River when I'm in Portland, and I'm constantly hoping I will see Colossal Claude. So he is the one that I have brought to you guys today. So Colossal Claude actually has not been seen. I guess the last known sighting of him was in 1989. So it's been a while. So chances of me actually seeing him, pretty slim, but I keep an eye out. But the first sighting of him was in 1934 The crew of the Columbia River lightship had a run-in with a creature they said was 40 feet long with an 8-foot long neck, a horse-shaped head. It was kind of a gray fur. And the thing was just gigantic. And it was in March. So during Chinook season, the Chinook salmon run is a really popular thing that happens in the area. So tons of fish just all over the place spawning. And so it makes sense that all of the sightings happen to occur, interestingly enough, during the Chinook salmon run. So that was the first one. Then a few years later in 1937, a commercial fishing crew called the Viv ran into a very similar looking creature, and they noted that its body was like what was it? 4 feet wide, I think is what they said at the body, and that the head looked like a giant horse. Someone else referred to it as an aquatic giraffe looking creature. It was seen again a couple years later in 1939. And it's important to note here that in the 2 years between those last two sightings, the 37 and the 39 one, that the Grand Coulee Dam had been cut off, and most of the spawning fish were kind of removed from the area, so it was harder to find salmon. And on the 1939 one, it was a halibut fishing crew called Argo that saw him not 10 feet from the ship eating the fish out of their net. Like he destroyed the net and was eating all the fish. The whole crew sees him. I also find this one fascinating because every time that there's like a witness account of it, it's large crews who are seeing it. So it's not just one individual person, it's a bunch of people corroborating the story. Let's see. So then after the 39 sighting, it wasn't really seen again for quite a while until there was a sighting of what would be a similar creature, but it couldn't have been the same one because this one was considerably smaller, and they said it was only about 15 feet, so maybe a juvenile, but all the other characteristics seemed very similar. And it would happen to be the Shell Oil Company that had the sighting when they were looking for oil. So I want to get more details on that because it's rumored that they actually got video footage, but I have no idea if any of that is actually true. But yeah, so that was in 1963, and then in 1989, it was another commercial boat came across a giant thing that was right in front of their boat, stealing the fish from their commercial net and tore the net all up. So that is it. That is the story of Colossal Claude.
Lisa, that was legit. Right away, I have a question for you. And this is free advertisement for Rogue Ale. Have you tried the Colossal Claude drink by Rogue Ale? That's what
I have not. I just heard that they had made one.
That looks amazing.
But I haven't tried it. I love their bat squatch. So.
Oh, cool. All right. Good job.
Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to, we'll go ahead and go with Sarah.
Hey, okay. Hey, I'm Sarah. I'm the owner and curator of the American Snallygaster Museum here in Maryland, and obviously quite a big cryptid fan. I actually changed my cryptid that I was going to do tonight. So I am doing Chessie, who is our Maryland Chesapeake Bay monster, kind of our Loch Ness type of guy. And I can't believe this wasn't my first thought when we discussed water monsters last week, but I'm an ER nurse. I worked in Baltimore for a long time, and I had a patient tell me that they actually saw Chessie. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. Okay, so Chessie was first spotted in the 1930s. Let me find my thing. I wasn't ready yet. okay, sometime in the 1930s, basically by a military helicopter. They described it as being 40 feet long, 5 inches wide, and 7 or 8 inches deep. And this was in the Chesapeake Bay. There have been several pictures taken of Chessie that have been published in the Baltimore Sun. Lots of stuff by different fishermen. We have a spotting in 1978 by a retired CIA officer. Lots of spotting by families out boating, and even a video from the 80s, but it's pretty grainy, so it's not the greatest. The most recent sighting with coverage was in 2014, when someone said they spotted a long snake-like creature slithering through the water with a serpentine motion that was at least 20 feet long. Some people think this could be an anaconda, but it's not really realistic that it could live in the cold water of the Chesapeake Bay. And there was actually a manatee that got very confused and ended up in the Chesapeake Bay in 1994 and actually came back to visit every year until 2011. That was nicknamed Chessie, but that also doesn't account for the sightings. So the last official sightings, 2014. But for me, I'm going to say summer 2019, when my patient jumped into the Baltimore Harbor because he swore that he saw this thing.
That is the craziest story. Like, that's why he was in the ER, because he jumped into the harbor to go after it, you're saying, in 2019?
Yes, and we had to put him in like the decontamination shower because the harbor is absolutely filthy and disgusting. It was awful, but he was, adamant that he saw this monster in there. So who knows? He may have been intoxicated. That may have played a part, but I still think it's pretty interesting that was his reason, because it's a pretty long jump and it's a pretty extreme thing to do. If you're not from here, you may not know, but it's pretty disgusting.
That's super interesting. I think that's the most recent sighting so far in this discussion. I'm pretty sure we'll see if there's anything more recent. But thank you,
I had a
Sarah.
quick question for Sarah. You said there was a manatee in Chesapeake Bay?
Yes, there was a very confused. They're not the brightest creatures. So it's happened a few times where manatees have gotten confused. I literally do not understand that. I didn't know that this could happen. But it says that this Florida manatee has visited the bay several times between 1994 and 2011. And after the 1994 visit, they tagged it so they could keep track of it, and it kept coming back. So she got the nickname Chessie, which I thought was very cute.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. All right.
But they don't naturally live there.
Yeah, I've heard stories of like beluga whales coming up the St. Lawrence River, like as far as Montreal, and wondering like how many ocean or other types of sea life go into new waters just out of curiosity and get misidentified.
That is a really interesting thought, Greg. That's awesome.
Sorry, did you pick another person?
Oh my gosh, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to call on Kenzie.
Well, hi guys. My name is Kenzie, and I am the host of the Crypto Chats podcast. You can find me on Instagram, and I'm going to talk to you guys about the Bear Lake monster. I really you'll hear, I really focused in my research on like one specific part of this because I thought it was like just really bizarre, but it also like somehow like relates to my childhood, and I just thought it was crazy. So I wanted to like really hone in on that one specific part of it. So for a little context, Bear Lake is it's on the border of Idaho and Utah, and the border of the two states literally goes right through the middle of the lake, which I think is just kind of cool. So basically it is a lake monster, very standard in description, with the exception of it's described as having really long legs, like 18-inch legs that it's been seen walking along the shoreline on. And it's also described to be cream colored, which is, I feel like, pretty different as opposed to like the standard lake monster that we know and love. And one other thing about its physical description is that the couple of eyewitnesses that have seen it have described it as being at most 50 feet long and at least 40 feet long. So that's big. That's a big boy. But yeah, so huge lake monster in this giant lake on the border of Idaho and Utah. So basically, the first like actual recorded sighting of this cryptid dates back to 1868 when a chief of an indigenous tribe in the area was interviewed about this creature's existence. And he basically said, yeah, no, we've been leaving offerings for what they call the water devil for years on end now to try to keep the peace because we don't like it. And that was in 1868, I believe. It might have been 69, but I'm pretty sure it was 68. So then we're going to fast forward a little bit. And there was a Mormon colonizer named Joseph C. Rich who kind of came in and he like took over and he saw this creature and he was like, great, we're seeing this thing. We're going to start talking about it. Because of his influence in the Mormon church, the Church of Latter-day Saints got really invested in this cryptid. They took like a lot of interest in it and they started doing preaching tours specifically to that area so that they could talk to locals about their experiences with this creature. This is the part that I think is like super interesting because I grew up going to Mormon church. I grew up going to the Church of Latter-day Saints, in New Hampshire. And I don't go anymore, but I grew up doing it. So I didn't think that there was a connection between Mormonism and cryptozoology until I did some research into this. So anyway, fast forward a little bit. They got so interested in this creature that the president of the Latter-day Saints church at that time, I don't remember what his name was, sorry, I didn't write it down, decided to go in and basically launch a full-scale investigation into the cryptid. And he went so far as to send a massive piece of rope to Idaho to kind of aid in the capture of the Bear Lake monster. This man, specifically the first white guy that we talked about, Joseph Rich, he eventually went on record and said, hey, like I made it up. I fooled you all, like that wasn't real. And then a lot of people in the area, including all of the indigenous people who have been, witnessing this cryptid for a very long time, kind of came forward and were like, well, that's not totally true, I guess. Like you might have made up your sighting, but we all still think that this exists. And as far as like modern sightings, there's not really a lot, I'll be honest. But I do like, one of the things I really like about areas with weird cryptids is that sometimes they like kind of take that cryptid and just like thrust it into everything that they do in their area. And this area is no exception to that. And they had Bear Lake monster tours where people would get a 45-minute scenic lake tour where they would get an entire description of the cryptids, like history, its origins, what it looked like, in a boat that was modeled after the Bear Lake monster. And yeah, that's what I got for you guys. I'll be honest, I was really tired when I was researching this, so I know that was a little scatterbrained, a little more than usual, but that's what I have for you. Thank you.
That's pretty cool. I feel like I've heard, you mentioned Mormonism and like cryptids. I feel like I've heard something about Bigfoot and Mormonism in the past, like Cain. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the thing, but pretty cool that the lake monster was associated with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I went to Mormon church until I was 13, and I have like no conscious memories of like there being any relation between, what I was being told when I was going to church and like cryptozoology. So it's like, it was just weird for me to be doing the research and be like, oh my God, like this is crazy. A bunch of Mormons were like so hyped about this cryptid that they launched this whole investigation. And I was like, wow, maybe this was the path my life was supposed to take or something. I don't know.
Wow, that is super fascinating. I mean, after this, I'm going to look to see if there's a book written about the relationship between Mormonism and cryptozoology. That would be pretty interesting to read, I think.
I realized I didn't call on someone to go next, so I'm going to go ahead and call on Jeff.
Go ahead.
Hold
Greg.
on one sec.
Go ahead, Greg.
Lauren actually requested to go next because she's got to get to bed. So
That's cool.
Sorry, my bad. Go ahead,
let's
Lauren.
invite Lauren to the stage.
Thank you guys. I got my COVID vaccine last night and it is kicking my tail today. No, like my arm hurts and I'm tired, like exhausted. But other than that, no huge side effects. So I'm pretty grateful. Anyway, I'm Lauren. I'm from Night Callers Bigfoot Radio and I'm based out of Oklahoma. So I stole the Oklahoma Octopus back from Keith Rollins, who could not be here tonight. So the Oklahoma Octopus is people started saying that this was a thing. They were blaming all these swimming and drowning deaths on this thing and saying that it was this thing living in the lakes of Oklahoma, specifically Lake Thunderbird, Oologah Lake, and Lake Tenkiller. And I have either swam or kayaked or fished in all of those lakes, so that's vaguely terrifying. Anyway, so it attacks and kills unsuspecting swimmers. However, there's no existing footage of it, and there's no physical evidence, really, despite reports of numerous sightings of this thing. So it's most likely a cephalopod, more specifically, an octopus, according to the description of the creature. This would make the Oklahoma octopus the only freshwater dwelling cephalopod species. This would not make the animal entirely unique because there are other members of the typically marine environment that do live in freshwater environments, like certain sharks. Anyway, octopi have been recorded, at least for brief times, living in freshwater environments. One such case involves a common octopus being caught at Lake Conway in Faulkner County, Arkansas, which I thought was fascinating because I did not know that. They think most likely it was released as a pet and it survived out there a little bit. The description of this creature, however, is that it's like the size of a horse and has leathery reddish brown skin. Again, it lives in these lakes, and so people think that it is a rare living fossil that's still surviving, and that this part of the country was long ago a shallow sea, so it's perfect for the octopus, like perfect environment. And the octopus, they adapt to different types of water, so they can habitate from the tropics to the frigid waters of Antarctica. However, to go ahead and, cut this down, it sounds great. There's all these witness encounters and everything, but most of the lakes in Oklahoma were constructed in the mid-20th century and by damming up lakes or by damming up rivers and stuff like that. So I doubt that a fossil would live that long. And then all of the bodies that were pulled out of the water, they didn't have any sucker lacerations on them, which I know is really morbid, but, if it was really pulled down by an octopus, there would be like the kraken going on. So that's basically kind of it. It's just we have this folklore type thing where they're blaming all these drownings on a water cryptid, and they decided the octopus of Oklahoma would be the way to go with that. And so, yeah, that's the water cryptid of Oklahoma.
So just the fact that you have horse-sized octopus and crazy Bigfoot in Area X in Oklahoma too, that just blows my mind. Like, that's pretty solid, Lauren.
I know we don't have any like lizard people or anything interesting, but we do have, by God, that Oklahoma octopus and big feet coming out of our ears.
I think this needs to be said, but octopus are basically aliens.
100%.
Basically.
Yeah,
They're so weird.
It's like they're extraterrestrial.
Yeah, they are for sure one of the most unique animals there is.
Yes, and they're very adaptable. I read in my research about this, I found out so much about octopi that I never knew, but they are so adaptable to different environments that They had like this whole thing lined out where it traveled up the Mississippi and it slowly adapted to fresh water. And then by the time it made it to Oklahoma, it was okay to live in our lakes. Like somebody mapped this entire thing out, which I thought was fascinating.
Ink.
And I think Jeff was next. And thank you guys for having this amazing discussion tonight.
Hope you get some rest, Lauren. Thank you.
Yeah, take care of yourself. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff. I'm the host of the Strangeology podcast and YouTube channel. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, wherever there's social media. I'm usually there. So tonight I'm going to talk about Sinkhole Sam. So the legend of Sinkhole Sam comes from the small town of central Kansas called Inman. And like many small towns in America, this town has a legend, and it's a legend of a water-based cryptid. So the legend revolves around this creature, which is said to be a large serpentine monster, which lives in a nearby lake just northeast of the town called Lake Inman. And as a backstory, during the which is important later. During the 1920s and 30s, many of the lakes in central Kansas were drained, and this left Lake Inman as one of the largest natural lakes left in the state today. So it's not a big lake. It only measures about a square quarter mile. It's really more of a pond. About 50, 60 years ago, locals in the area began to report seeing this strange creature swimming within it in a particular region of the lake called the Big Sinkhole. The first known account of Sinkhole Sam comes from 1952. I guess there were two unidentified men, those anonymous reports, who spotted some weird creature while they were fishing in the lake one day. And then a year later, in 1953, another encounter was reported. This one's a little better documented, but it was by local teenagers at the time. They were like 18 years old. Albert Neufeld and George Rager, who claimed to have spotted Sinkhole Sam. Neufeld, he apparently took it upon himself to, quote, defend the town by taking pot shots on the beast from a nearby bridge. And he missed before the creature escaped underwater. And beyond that, there were multiple reports in the following years of a massive snake-like creature swimming within Lake Inman. And descriptions of Sam seemed to kind of coalesce around it being a serpentine creature. Most estimates were that it was around 15 feet in length and about as thick and round as a car tire. Most witness reports of this creature didn't really indicate that it was a dangerous or aggressive creature, but reports of Sinkhole Sam became so notorious that it drew tourists from all around hoping to catch a glimpse of this curious lake monster, which I'm sure did great for local businesses. And today you can still hear locals talking about this weird, curious lake creature. Apparently, Inman has an annual festival in September called the Santa Fe Day, which the whole theme of that is celebrating the history of the Santa Fe Trail, which cut through the area. And according to some articles that I read, if you're ever at the festival, sometimes you can still hear people who were around back then recounting sightings of Sinkhole Sam, which is kind of cool. Now, as far as what this creature was, some people think that Sinkhole Sam was real, maybe some kind of abnormally large snake, or maybe like a giant earthworm. There are known earthworms that can grow up to 6 feet in length, so that's about half the size of Sinkhole Sam. But the most popular idea in my research that I found was that people like to think that he was some kind of unknown prehistoric species that came from a network of underground caverns under the area, and was displaced when all the lakes in central Kansas were drained back in the 20s. So that's where that piece comes into play, back in the 20s and 30s. But since like the 50s and 60s, sightings have stopped. So most people think that if Sinkhole Sam was a real creature, it may be that it died, or it's also possible that if it was like some kind of subterranean cavern creature, it could have retreated into the sinkhole and back on deep underground. So that's the story of Sinkhole Sam. And if anyone has any comments, I think we're good. Otherwise, I can pass the mic off to Aleks.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, man. That's definitely a bit of a strange one. I had not heard of that one before. So my name is Alexander Pedicov. I am a filmmaker, adventurer, YouTube channel Sasquatch Out of the Shadows. I work with small town monsters as well as chasing legends. So surprise, surprise, I'm going to pick Champ, the lake monster of Lake Champlain. Those that know me obviously know I'm very fond of that mystery.
5 minutes, Aleks. Absolutely 5 minutes.
I know. I promise I will keep it within 5 minutes. I've got like a little kind of game plan here. So yeah, I could talk about this all day, as Jeremiah was alluding to. Basically, the Lake Champlain monster, aka Champ or Champy, is said to live in Lake Champlain, which is a massive lake, 120 miles long, about 12 miles wide at the widest, 420 feet deep at the deepest. It borders Vermont, the state of Vermont, as well as New York, and it juts into Quebec, Canada, just a little bit. It's a really mysterious lake. It was part of the Atlantic Ocean at one point. It was known as the Champlain Sea around 10 to 12,000 years ago. There were whales and other marine life that lived in the lake. And there are actually some fish today that live in the lake that were adapted from saltwater fish, and such as the Atlantic salmon in the lake and some of the other fish that are found. There's over 90 species of fish in the lake today. It's one of the most biodiverse in North America. It is one of the largest lakes in North America. I think it's in like the top 15 list. So it's up there. I mean, it's nothing compared to the Great Lakes, but it's still an amazing place. So for centuries, people have told the story of seeing this strange creature living in the waters of the lake. It started with the Abenaki on one side, on the Vermont side, the Algonquin tribes there. And then on the other side, you had the Mohawk, part of the Iroquois Confederacy. They all had stories. Settlers, when they started coming in the area, you had stories going back to the Revolutionary War in that time period. It wasn't until about 1819, or actually 1809, I should say, there was a newspaper article that mentioned some sort of a sea serpent in the lake. And then in 1819, there was a story about it being seen in Bulwagga Bay, which is a place that been known to be seen over the years in near Port Henry, New York, which today claims to be the home of Champ. So it's basically described as having the long neck, the humps, occasionally on land sightings where flippers are described in a plesiosaur-like appearance. Some of the older reports tend to be more serpent-like. They called it the Lake Champlain sea serpent. And in the 1870s, there was a big serpent scare down by Whitehall, New York, in which P.T. Barnum actually ended up putting up a bounty for Champ at that time, which is pretty interesting. And Champ had a heyday well before Nessie. I mean, Nessie was known from the 1930s on. Champ was already, well known in the headlines across America at that point. And it kind of went out of fashion for a little bit. It came back, and Champ has had waves of sightings every once in a while. It'll come back into the media, but there have been sightings pretty much consistently up until September of 2020. I was up there. We were filming for Chasing Legends. We put out an episode about that recently, and we talked to some people who had experiences the weekend basically before we were there. And that summer, there seemed to be a lot more sightings this summer because of maybe COVID. The international shipping between Canada and the U.S. on the lake was shut down. So lots of great sightings. I mean, you have the Sandra Mancy photo, which to this day is the best example of a lake monster photo. It's never been debunked or proven, but it hasn't, unlike the Loch Ness photo, the sturgeon photo has not been proven to be a fake. You have supposed echolocation as well. Lots of pieces of supposed video evidence, like the Bodette film and the Olsen video. There's plenty of photos and many more stories. I mean, I've interviewed a bunch of witnesses, and I'm convinced there's something going on that lake. It's one of the most beautiful places in the Northeast. Absolutely, they call it the West Coast of New England for a reason. If you ever have a chance to go there, check it out. Hit me up. I have a Champ road trip guide. Starts in Whitehall and kind of goes all around the lake. And if you want to find out more, a couple books I'd recommend are The Untold Story of Champ by Robert Bartholomew. Solid book about the history of Champ. Champ Beyond the Legend by Joseph Zarzinski. The Vermont Monster Guide by Joseph Citro and Steve Bissett. And for media stuff, obviously I'm going to have to plug myself. So my series On the Trail of Champ through Small Town Monsters, did that a few years ago. As I mentioned, Chasing Legends, we just put out an episode on that. And Monster Quest, there's a lot of other shows that have covered over the years, but it's the most fascinating lake monster mystery in the world to me, even more so than Nessie. So that's pretty much it.
Bravo.
That's awesome,
Aleks.
Aleks.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
so I'm going to pick, let's see, who hasn't gone yet? I know Tate likes to go last, so I'm going to pick Mike then. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. I knew you were going to go there. Sorry I'm joining you guys a little late. So I'm going to be doing Old Greenie in my area.
Hey, Mike, why don't you shout out who you are and where people can find you?
Okay. I'm Mike from Tactical Bigfoot Research and Where's My Sage, the podcast. You can find me at Tactical Bigfoot Research on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, or you can also find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter underneath Where's My Sage, where I'm a co-host there. Tonight, I'm doing the Old Greenie from Cayuga Lake, which is in the Finger Lakes region of New York. And I've been doing a little research through the area because every time I turn around to one of the lakes in the area, I keep finding another story. And there's two different creatures in two different lakes, but ironically, they're both tied together with underground channels and a full canal system that runs between both lakes. And so Cayuga Lake, and I'm pulling from Mysterious Universe for my first sighting. Cayuga Lake is one of upstate New York's glacial lakes, and they're both glacial lakes. The Finger Lakes, there's a bunch of them in the area, and the history is very interesting. The Iroquois, of course, were in that area, and a lot of the stories come from their native serpent legends as well. The lake is this particular lake, Cayuga Lake, is 435 foot deep, and it's home to two water monsters actually. But Old Greenie is the big one, and pulling from that particular location on there. Life of the Finger Lakes also brings up some interesting information about the lake. The lake is actually 38 miles in length. The Greenie is generally said to be green. There's supposed to be a couple of victims that were in the area. So that pounces over to Seneca Lake. And in Seneca Lake, this is another Finger Lake. It's 38 miles long. They say it's 617 feet, but I tell you, it's a little bit deeper than that. The Navy actually tests different submarine items there.
Mike,
Again,
sorry,
this
I'm
is
going to pause you for, one quick second. I do see the raised hand. In a few minutes, we're going to definitely bring some people up for questions. Just wanted to make sure that people didn't think we were ignoring them. So, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. And it's nice to know that raised hand is there. So again, this is a pretty good sized lake. These are both together, and in the 1899, actually, Captain Carlton C. Harridan and his pilot Frederick Rose actually saw what they thought was an overturned boat, and that was 25 foot long. However, when they closed in on it, it turned and swam away. It was had two rows of sharp white teeth. Now the Old Greenie, which is next to it, in the Cayuga Lake, very similar to description. Again, it's that snake-like appearance, the green, and again, I'm pulling this one now from Cryptid Fandom, and that gives a nice little description. So I'm doing a little more digging because as I go along here, there's an additional lake, which is Silver Lake, and again, these are all within 45 minutes to an hour drive from each other. Each lake has its own creature, but they all have that similar giant freshwater eel look to them. In the lake that I actually do some diving in and have run an underwater robot in, there's actually stories of an 80-foot snake skeleton that was found. So in my research, I'm wondering if it's actually related to that. So Old Greenie, and then again, the Seneca Lake monster are mine, and I'm going to cut it short as you've got some questions in the audience tonight.
Thank you, Mike. All I can think of is when you said that long skeleton is like the crate dragon from Star Wars in the desert. I think that's how you say it. Greg, you'll have to correct me if I said it wrong. But
you're good, man.
All right, I'm good. Tate, are you cool if we go to questions? Are you cool, man?
That actually makes me relieved.
Yeah, I know. If you'd like to hang out with us in the Bigfoot Society Club, now there's it's a little bit different now. So we actually have a club set up. We are the first cryptozoology themed club on Clubhouse. If you would like to get on the platform, you have an iPhone. It's iPhone only right now. Just contact me on Instagram at Bigfoot Society, or contact any of the people that were on stage with me that you may know as well, and we can hook you up with an invite. We'll do our best anyways. Yeah, but we would love to have you. Just search for Bigfoot Society in the Clubhouse app. Click the follow button, and then we'll make you a member of the club, and then you'll get the notifications. We do a club room every Wednesday p.m. 9:30 Central Standard Time, and a different topic about cryptozoology every week. But usually we're going to be having a Q&A time after the discussion. That, unless it's special, will probably not be recorded. So you definitely want to not miss out on that Q&A time. It's kind of a special time for those that are there. But again, thanks for listening to this great discussion we had about the different regional water cryptids that can be found all over the place. A lot of really cool discussions. But thanks again for listening to Bigfoot Society. I appreciate you using your time to listen to this as you go about your day. Again, check us out at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com and at Bigfoot Society on Instagram. And we'll see you next week with another interview. Some really good ones coming up. So we'll talk to you later. Have a good one, guys.